Welcome to Simone Quilts design session number 4. Today I'm excited to introduce you to Louise. She is an amazing thread quilter and an art quilter. Her thread painted pieces just look so lifelike and real. I'm just in awe of her talent. Louise sent me a series of mini art quilts that she created, but she was stumped on how to quilt them, as traditional free motion quilting, she says, is not her forte. I will walk you through my process of how I would design the quilting for these pieces and just give a full design for one of them. My first step is to just take a look at them and observe them. Since these 4 pieces are part of a series, I wanted to make sure that I picked out a common element among them to be repeated throughout, and then change some of the other design elements in other areas to give each piece its own individuality. These pieces are playing with the use of shadows. I wanted that to be the common element among them, so they will have the same repeating design, whatever I choose that to be. Since the color of the shadows is very dark, the design will need to be simple. Just enough quilting to provide texture and be that signature element among the series. So we can see that here, 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 and here. The piecing and imagery of the quilts needs to remain the focus of these pieces, so the quilting should be overall simple and clean. A matching micro quilter thread would be my preference in this case. Since these quilts are made of all geometric shapes, I think straight line quilting would complement them extremely well. Instead of playing with different types of designs like swirls, paisleys, etc., the intent would be to play more with the texture that the quilting can provide to enhance the imagery of these quilts. I would play around with the density of the straight lines, for example, matchstick quilting, or the direction of the lines, for example, vertical or diagonal quilting, and where it would be appropriate to ignore the piecing instead of follow it. I've chosen to go ahead and show you some of these designs on this piece here. So let me go ahead and switch over to that. I'm going to go ahead and start sketching like I would if I had this as a piece of paper in front of me. I'm going to go ahead and start with the sky. I want the sky pieces to have the same design. I want it to look like it's flowing from one piece to another, like there's just this structure in front of it. So for the sky, I really want it to kind of fall back. So right now I'm just highlighting the section that I'm talking about. So in these sections, I would stitch in the ditch so that it separates from the rest of the structure. And I'm going to go ahead and try just maybe some diagonal quilting here. And I want the density to be probably at 1/4 inch. Of course, this really depends on the size of the piece. I don't actually know how large these are, so density is all kind of relative. So if I were to take my ruler, if you can kind of see my mouse cursor here, I would want to take my ruler and make sure that I got the exact same angle. And I would actually try to match up these lines so that it looks like it's all one piece with just this structure in front of it. If this is too much straight line quilting later on and I decide, okay, yeah, maybe too much geometric looking shapes, another option for this sky piece would actually be swirls. Very small swirls. But it would give you some movement and some separation to the rest of the structure. So I'm going to keep that in mind in the back of my head as I keep designing this piece. We'll leave it there for now. I would then look at this pink part of the structure, or the forward-facing part of the structure. I would want to make sure that my quilting would follow the angle of these pieces. So this piece is pretty straight. Oh gosh, it looks not straight when I draw it, but it is a really straight piece. So I would want to make sure that if I did any straight line quilting here, that I would want to follow this shape, this angle, I should say. and then just make sure it's continued along here. and make sure that the angle is straight. I thought a really cool design piece here to play up these shadows would be to follow the angle of the shadowed piece, but match it up with the lines that I created for the front. So I would match these up like this and make it look like these lines are spilling over the edge. Like that. That would add, as you can already see here, an added level of dimension. As you notice here, I did stop at this piece right here because it's its own piece that would have its own quilting and its own angle. And so I'm going to go ahead and leave this here. I don't know how thick I would want that. It's looking a little bit too thin, or excuse me, it's looking a little bit too thick there. So I'd want to make sure that there was enough quilting there. Then I would want to make sure that this shadowed section got some decent amount of quilting because this is the focal piece, so I really want it to stand out. So along with the vertical lines here, which I'm going to go ahead and repeat here, I would want the lines that I created here to spill down only halfway into this shadowed section. And preferably also have it meet up with the lines that I made cross-hatching these over here. Kind of like the ones where I had them meet up over here. So that definitely adds a lot more texture in this area and leaves these other areas less quilted. And then you're only putting some additional quilting in this slightly less shadowy area to match the tone of what you're seeing in this piece. So in this case, I've decided not to ignore the piecing. I've decided to respect the piecing and just stop here to enhance the colors that she's chosen to represent the different levels of shading in this piece. So as I'm looking at it now, I'm pretty happy with how it's looking with the angles. I do think that this is a bit much, the straight lines in the sky. So I would probably change that to some swirls of some kind, or maybe even some serpentine lines, just something softer that would help it break away from the rest of this piece here. The great thing about these art quilts is that it's completely up to Louise, her choice to represent this piece how she feels it should be represented. Maybe it's not a structure at all, I don't know, but I do think that having a common element among all of the pieces is important. So the main focus and the main consideration should be along these shadow pieces. And as I've mentioned before in my other videos, really play around with the different designs so that you know what will work. I typically actually do this with paper and pencil, transparent paper, and I will have my image at the bottom and then just create a new design every time I think of one. And this is a really great way of doing it too. I hope you enjoyed seeing Louise's work and my thought process behind designing the quilting for these types of pieces. You can find all my design sessions on my website at simonequilts.com or on my YouTube channel. Click on the link in my bio to sign up to get quilting design ideas for your quilts too.